Hello guys, here's another tutorial for you. This time we're going to be talking about how to use equation editor. I'm going to start with Microsoft Word and then I'll go into Google Docs and see what we can do from within that software. Alright, so say you need to insert an equation somewhere in your report. If it's a chemical reaction, you can do it one of two different ways. The best way to do it is to put it on its own line. So you're going to create a space within the paragraph like this. And then you're going to want to center the reaction itself. So go into the Home tab and click on centering here. And then you're going to click on Insert. Actually, if you do it this way, it'll center it automatically for you. So if you use the equation editor to write a chemical reaction, you're going to find that equation editor from the Insert tab way over here on the right. You're going to click on Equation. And so this is kind of a nice way to write chemical reactions. It keeps them a little bit more neat than when you write them with just the regular inline text editor of Word. So let's imagine that we're going to write the reaction for something like the stoichiometry experiment that you did, where you have a combination reaction. So you're just going to have some reactant A plus some reactant B, and it's going to form the product A sub something, B sub something. Now, the arrow is going to be available for you from this menu up here. Let me go back and show you what I clicked on. So it's this panel right here with the different symbols, okay? And it's not showing right now, so you need to click this little down arrow caret right here. When you click that, it expands the palette, and you can see a lot more selections than what was first visible. And here's your right arrow that we're going to use to represent the arrow of the chemical reaction. And now we need to have subscripts in the product because we have some kind of stoichiometric ratio between A and B, and we're going to represent that with a variable. The best way to do this is to use the script tab right here, or button I guess it is, and for the subscript it's going to look like this, and you're going to want two of them in a row. We're going to have A, and the subscript on A is unknown at this time, so we can just give it a variable X. And once I've typed the X, if I keep typing, everything's going to still be a subscript. So what I need to do is arrow over. So I'm going to type on my keyboard, hit the right arrow button, and now you can see that the blinking cursor is taller. So that means that the next thing I type is going to be at the normal script height. And I need a subscript on my B as well, so I'm going to go ahead and click the script button and select the subscript option. And so I'm going to type a B here, and my subscript on B I'm just going to say is Y. Now, the thing about the equation editor is that it italicizes everything in the equation, because when we write mathematical formulas we always italicize variables, and the equation editor assumes that everything that you write is a variable. Well, when you're writing a chemical reaction, that's not the case, so you're just going to go back through and change the font from italicized to regular text. And you can do that with this key right here. For some reasons it's in the conversion, it's called a conversion, but so I guess you're converting from italics to regular unitalicized font. And then I like to go and add a little bit of space in here because sometimes it tends to look a little too squished. Okay, so that would be a nice way of representing a chemical equation in your report. One thing that can be very useful, so notice when you click on somewhere inside of that chemical equation, you get the tab, you get the design menu activated, and when you click outside of it, that design menu goes away. So when you want to modify this, you have to make sure that you're working within it, and then you'll have access to the design tab. Okay, so what I was starting to say is that a nice thing to do with your chemical reactions and your formulas is to go ahead and give them a number. So we could call this equation number 1. And when I do that, of course it's kind of messed up the formatting. And there's no real great way of getting this formatting right other than to just put your cursor where you want it and add in space until it looks like it's about the right spacing for you. So something like that will look good. So now I have a number on this equation, and I can reference that in my text. So I don't have to rewrite this equation later if I wanted to refer back to it either in the calculation section or in my final discussion section. I can just say as observed from equation 1, and then the reader knows to go and hunt down that number, and obviously it's going to be the first equation that appears in the paper or the report. Okay, so let's do an example now that's a little bit more complicated where we actually want to type in some kind of mathematical formula. Let's see, so say you're in a different paragraph now in your introduction, and you're typing and you want to you're talking about some kind of calculation that you need to perform later, and so you're going to type a sentence, and usually in the middle of the sentence is where it's appropriate to write that mathematical formula. Something like this. I'm not really thinking right now or able to think of the exact formulas that you need for your stoichiometry lab, so I'm just going to kind of make something up here that you could use. So again, you want to write the formula on its own separate line. Formulas and reactions are always presented on their own line. So position your cursor wherever you're going to need to write the formula and hit return. And then again, you go to the Insert tab and Insert Equation. Okay. If you remember from the first lab we did, we needed an equation to calculate the average and standard deviation. So let's write now a mathematical formula for calculating standard deviation. So you can use different variables for standard deviation. I'm just going to type SD and then the equal sign, and I'm doing all this directly on my keyboard. Obviously you have access to the equal sign from the symbols palette up here, but it's the same symbol when you use it on the keyboard. So if you remember, the standard deviation requires a summation symbol, and the summation symbol is available here in the large operator button. So you click on that, and it gives you a number of different options for the summations, and then also products and unions and intersections, which we won't be using. But there's a lot available in these tabs, in these buttons, so you can just click through and search around to see and find what you need. So here we go with the summation symbol like this, and I'm picking this one because we're going to sum over all data points from I equals 0 to n. And inside, so you just click in the little part in the highlighted box that you need to type in, and you just click in it and you type what you want. So now I'm going to click in this box right here. And the formula that we're using is it's going to be the square of a difference. Okay, so I'm going to need parentheses and I'm going to need a superscript. So I'm going to go ahead, and the parentheses I can do with a keystroke. You can also use the brackets button here, but in this case we don't need the larger bracket, so we just use the keystroke. But I do need the script. Superscript is what I was trying to say. So you're going to click that same button again, and this time select the superscript option. And inside of the, I guess you'd call it the operator here, you're going to open parentheses, and I believe the formula was the average x. And the average x symbol has that flat line on top of it, which is referred to as an accent within the equation editor. So your accents are available here on the accent button. Click that, and you're going to search for the one that has a flat line on top, which is this one right here. So it's a bar. Okay, so it's x bar, the average minus Oops, see how okay, so now what it did is it extended the bar, so now it's got the bar over both the X and the minus sign. So we're going to backspace and then remember to arrow over before we type our next keystroke, which is the subtraction key. And then this one we need for each individual X value, which we annotate with the subscript I. So again, go to the script key, script button, I mean, click the subscript, and now you can type in X sub I, and then arrow over, close parentheses, and our superscript on this is a 2. Okay, so I always do this. I forget that this whole part, this whole this part that we've written already is actually part of the numerator, right? We have to divide all of this by n minus 1. And so when you forget to do that, it's okay. You're just going to go back in and click on the fraction button and insert the fraction option. And then you're just going to have to cut this, Control X, and paste it, Control V, or Command X and Command V if you're on a Mac, into the numerator right there. And then in the denominator we can have the n minus 1. And so you see that we have the whole equation for standard deviation. And yeah, so there are really so many different things that you can do with the equation editor. It's kind of fun. We can do any equation that you want to. We don't really get that complicated with it, but I encourage you to poke around in here and see all the different cool things. And so don't be afraid to use this, and if you ever have any questions about it, don't hesitate to ask. That concludes this tutorial, and there will be a separate tutorial, I think, because this one got kind of long, on how to use, or what you can do in Google Docs.